Hello, I'm Lyle DeVries, a consultant assisting the South Dakota Department of Transportation, or SDDOT, with the Black Hills Context-Sensitive Corridors Study. For this portion of the meeting, we turn our attention to US Highway 16A, located west of and within Custer State Park. This corridor is approximately 13 miles from end to end and is identified as Corridor 7 within the study. This presentation covers the unique transportation needs and the improvement concepts proposed for the corridor and will provide an opportunity for you to explore some of the more critical focus areas. At the end of this presentation, you will be given instructions on how to review improvement concepts in more detail and provide your comments. This corridor has been identified as a destination access corridor. Improvements identified to help the roadway better meet its primary function include added shoulder width where roadside features allow, intersection enhancements, pedestrian and wildlife crossing improvements, and roadway realignment to address tight curves. Actions proposed in this phase of the study reflect needs identified in earlier phases of the study through work with SDDOT staff, public meetings, and discussions with agencies with vested interest in the success of the US 16A corridor. In phase one of the study, corridors were characterized based on their current and/or desired function in the regional highway network. The US 16A corridor, which is part of the Peter Norbeck Scenic Byway, was primarily identified as a scenic corridor with destination-specific travel function. While scenic destination travelers, such as visitors to Custer State Park, are the primary users, there are also commuters that rely on the US 16A corridor. As such, the desired higher speed and efficient travel characteristics of a commuter route are also considerations, but are secondary to the primary destination access function of the corridor. Commuter route type improvements are considered where they would not detract from the primary context of the corridor. Improvement strategies developed by the team to balance commuter needs with preserving the context include adjustments to the roadway cross-section, roadway curve improvements, and intersection improvements. This corridor contains a rich context of scenic views and resources. Accordingly, improvements to its transportation functions are balanced to complement the unique character of the roadway. To ensure a successful balance, each of the improvement types have been reviewed by SDDOT environmental staff, as well as representatives from Game Fish and Parks and the U.S. Forest Service to ensure that adjacent resource impacts are appropriately considered. Once you have viewed the improvement concepts, our team is eager to hear your input on how well the improvements complement the context of the highway. Shown here are the current US 16A roadway typical sections. As shown, the shoulder dimensions vary along the highway through the corridor. For the first few miles from the west end of the study area to east of the Bismarck campground, a wider shoulder exists compared to the rest of the study corridor, where existing shoulder widths vary and are generally very narrow, leaving little or no space for a disabled vehicle to exit the travel lanes or for use by bicyclists or pedestrians. In many locations, the roadside beyond the shoulder includes exposed rock faces, trees, steep slopes, and other obstacles that could pose a hazard to vehicles exiting the travel lanes. The proposed road section for the corridor would maintain the existing 12-foot travel lanes with a wider shoulder section, 6-foot minimum and 8-foot desired, that would provide a greater area for vehicles to pull out of the travel lanes and an area for recovery back into the lanes and for non-motorized users to occupy outside of the designated lanes. In some areas, the addition of guardrail to protect errant vehicles from roadside obstacles may be required with a widened shoulder. However, due to the context and constraints within the corridor, constructing wider shoulders may not always be practical. To minimize roadway widening activity, two shoulder improvement options are being considered for the corridor. The first would utilize the existing roadway section, but would adjust the lane and shoulder widths within that, reducing travel lanes to an 11-foot width with an additional foot on each side added to the shoulder. This option can be accomplished at little cost or impact to the corridor features. The second, more impactful option would maintain the 12-foot travel lanes and physically widen the shoulder. Impacts could include removal of trees, excavation of slopes, rock slopes, and addition of retaining wall and/or guardrail that would add visual clutter to the aesthetics of the corridor. The type and extent of shoulder improvements is likely to be location specific and variable throughout Corridor 7. With the scenic nature of the 16A corridor, another possible need identified and related to the roadway section is the provision of designated pullout opportunities along the corridor, as shown here. Such pullouts provide a refuge for drivers needing a short pause and allow faster moving traffic to progress more safely and efficiently. It also provides an opportunity for safe viewing of the corridor landscape. Exact locations for pullouts need to consider a number of factors, including roadside impacts, and there needs to be ample sight distance for approaching drivers to safely operate. The locations shown here and in the broader presentation are conceptual in nature. Based on a high-level review, a further design study will be required to locate and develop proposed pullout locations and limits. From a roadway geometric design perspective, there are approximately 23 curves along the corridor with speed advisory signs warning drivers to slow down for an approaching curve in the roadway. In addition to the currently signed locations, there are a number of curves that may dictate a safe travel speed less than the posted 35-mile-per-hour speed limit. They're currently not marked with advisory speeds. Some of the slower speed curves also demonstrate elevated crash frequency. The existing corridor has many curves that could fit in this example scenario, this example scenario shown here. The focus of this study was limited to those curves that would not support a 25-mile-per-hour operating speed per current engineering design criteria. For locations where roadway realignment is not feasible, existing roadway curvature is not conducive to speed limit travel, or a history of crashes exists, a less impactful and lower cost improvement in the form of roadway signs and pavement markings can be considered. This slide depicts some of these traffic control strategies that can be considered individually or in combination for a given roadway curve. To improve overall safety and better manage turning vehicles, improvements being considered at intersections include means to increase sight distance, improve intersection geometry, and add turn lanes separating turning traffic from through vehicle travel. Improvements at specific intersections are dependent on the surrounding roadside context and location-specific needs, such as parking areas and non-motorized user accommodations. The context of the US 16A corridor changes throughout. And with the primary focus on destination travel with a secondary focus on commuter traffic, proposed improvements are a combination of location-specific and corridor-wide strategies. Over the western end of the study corridor, some existing shoulder sections already meet the desired 8-foot width. And comparatively speaking, roadway curvature is not as severe as other sections of the corridor. In this area, proposed improvement considerations are primarily related to shoulders, shown with the red lines outside of the roadway on this graphic, and roadway curve traffic control, shown in yellow dots. The intersection of US 16A with Stockade Lake and the entrance to the Bismarck Campground is proposed to be reconstructed as shown in the upper right graphic at a location slightly east that would better balance available sight distance on all legs of the intersection. In addition, 16A would be widened to provide for dedicated right and left turn lanes. A few locations were also identified as possible locations for further pullout consideration. These areas are denoted with the A symbol on the graphic. Over the middle section of the study corridor, roadway curvature becomes more frequent and severe, and in some areas combined with more frequent changes in roadway grade. This central section is also home to the recreational areas around Legion Lake in the intersection with South Dakota Highway 87. As noted, existing shoulders through this section of the study corridor are narrow, and widening to the desired width may be quite impactful. Reapplication of existing pavement markings to reallocate the pavement width and use of the existing roadway section is the likely shoulder remedy for most locations. However, physical widening of shoulders in some isolated locations can be considered. With the frequent number of tight roadway curves, a corridor-wide application of traffic signing and marking improvements are also proposed. Possible pullout locations have also been identified. There are three location-specific improvements proposed in the middle section. Each are shown on the graphic here. The first, shown in the bottom picture on the slide, is improvements to the US 16A segment through the Legion Lake area. These include adjustments to the roadway curvature, delineation of access to the adjacent Legion Lake recreational features, and accommodations for non-motorized users. The second location-specific area is the US 16A intersection with SD 87, shown upper left. Here, the roadway is widened to provide right and longer left turn lanes along US 16A. The improvements would also include construction of a more formal and controlled parking area south of US 16A near the existing park access and visitor information station. Finally, the third location-specific improvement is to a horizontal curve east of SD 87, as shown in the picture at the top right. Here, the existing curve requires a travel speed below 25 miles per hour to navigate, and realignment to safely meet an operating speed of 25 miles per hour is felt to be achievable with minimal impact to the surrounding environment. The eastern third of the corridor is similar to the middle section with frequent tight roadway curves and grade changes. Over this eastern section, vertical drops and steep slopes with exposed rock are more common along the roadside. Similar to the middle section, roadway alignment modifications and shoulder widening are anticipated to be costly and impactful at many locations, with traffic signs and pavement markings being potentially the most feasible improvement solution. Some areas for pullouts have been identified, but again, these will need further vetting during project development. There is one location-specific improvement over the eastern section of the corridor, this at the Wildlife Loop Road intersection. Modifications are proposed to improve sight distance and relocate the intersection, various driveways and service roads serving the area. Some roadside clearing would also be required. Non-motorized user accommodations are also planned at this location, including modifications to parking areas and construction of a series of box culvert structures under US 16A that will have three distinct purposes. First, continue to effectively convey water under the roadway. Two, provide a possible crossing under US 16A for wildlife, as wildlife vehicle collisions have been more frequent and reported in this area. And three, accommodate planned and existing trail features and provide a pedestrian crossing under the roadway. Wildlife fencing was considered through this section to supplement the box culvert construction and increasing the effectiveness of a wildlife crossing. However, it was felt that the fence would negatively distract from the scenic nature of the area and restrict pedestrian access. As such, wildlife fence is no longer being considered. As noted throughout this presentation, Corridor 7, US 16A, contains a rich environmental resource list that requires careful consideration in addressing potential roadway improvements. Shown here are current environmental resources that could be impacted by the proposed improvements and would require more detailed evaluation within future environmental analyses and clearance processes. Resources present along the corridor include streams and wetlands, potential historic structures, park and forest land. Views and scenic quality are high throughout this scenic byway, a portion of the Peter Norbeck Scenic Byway. A red-green rating system is provided here in tabular form to allow for simple review of the performance of corridor improvements. Red circles indicate greater impacts or cost and less consistency with the design guidelines and the overall corridor vision. Green circles are generally positive, denoting lower costs and impacts and higher design and vision consistency. The identified vision for Corridor 7 would continue to support the destination travel and scenic context of the corridor, with particular improvements where feasible to better accommodate commuter and non-motorized user needs. Generally speaking, proposed improvements across the corridor are more in line with the scenic and destination goals and less emphasizing efficiency for commuters. The western third of the corridor may be the most conducive to commuter needs, given the wider shoulders, but the roadway curvature and topography over the majority of the corridor limit feasible roadway realignment and reconstruction considerations. The western third of the corridor is also the least costly to improve, with some shoulders already at the desired width and just one location of intersection improvement. Generally speaking, flatter roadway curvature with less traffic sign and pavement marking need potential are present here too. With the roadway curvature and 3 location-specific improvements, the central portion of the study corridor is likely the most expensive, although the eastern third is not far behind, with frequent curves, steep grades, guardrail, and possible wall needs associated with any shoulder widening, and the construction of the new box culvert structures near Wildlife Loop Road. Thank you for viewing this presentation. To learn more about Corridor 7, click the Click Here to Review and Comment button located below this video. This will take you to the segment map you initially selected. By pressing and holding the left mouse button, you can move the overall map to view the location or improvement you are most interested in, encircled in dashed lines as shown here. A quick mouse click while hovering over that improvement will take you to more detailed information. These instructions are repeated by clicking the About icon located in the gray ribbon along the left side of your screen. The Corridors icon, also located in the gray ribbon, allows you to quickly navigate between corridors and segments. Thank you for your time to review this video and provide your comments. We value your input.